The letter came in a plain white envelope. No stamps of authority, no government seal, just a smug return address, Homeowners Association. Inside was a single sheet of paper. But the number scrawled across the top hit me harder than any court order ever could. $250,000 in fines. I remember staring at that figure, my stomach hollowing out like the ground had been yanked from beneath me. $250,000 demanded by people who didn't build my home, didn't pay for my land, and didn't lift a single brick to raise the walls around me. People who called themselves neighbors, but acted like tyrants in pressed khakis and clipboards. They listed every so-called violation. The shed I built for my tools, the gravel I laid for my truck, even the shade of stain I used on my fence. Each line item came with a $sign attached, stacked like bricks in a wall meant to bury me alive, and at the bottom, printed in bold, failure to pay will result in a lien on your property. That was their plan. Strip me down, bleed me dry, own me without ever having lifted a finger. But here's what they didn't know this time. They had picked a fight with the wrong man, because I wasn't just a homeowner. I wasn't just some scared guy they could push around. Hidden in Dusty County records was a truth so explosive, so devastating, that it would flip the power dynamic overnight. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this nightmare began. It started with whispers. The kind you overhear at a barbecue or a late-night walk. The HOA board didn't like me. Not because of noise complaints or loud parties, no. It was because I didn't play their game. I didn't show up at their petty meetings. I didn't bow to their demands. And worst of all, I reminded them that my land had been here long before their bylaws ever existed. At first, it was little things. Notes on my door. Friendly reminders about grass length or trash cans being visible. But when I ignored their paper-thin authority, they escalated. They started measuring my fence with rulers, photographing my driveway, stalking every corner of my property like vultures circling prey. Every time I confronted them, it was the same smug smile, the same rehearsed line. We're just enforcing the rules. But these weren't rules. They were shackles, and they wanted me to wear them. Then came the first fine, $500. I laughed it off. Then $2,000, then $10,000. By the time the stack hit $250,000, I wasn't laughing anymore. They weren't just fining me. They were setting the stage to take my land from me completely. I remember walking into that HOA board meeting, holding their letter in my hand. The room smelled like stale coffee and cheap cologne, filled with people who believed a folding table and a gavel made them kings. One man, the board president, leaned back in his chair, smugness dripping from his lips. He tapped the papers in front of him and said, almost gleefully, "If you can't pay, we own you now." Those words lit a fire in me. Something snapped. I realized they weren't just trying to find me, they were trying to erase me. They wanted my land, my home, my life. But here's where the story takes a turn. Because instead of panicking, instead of begging or bending, I went searching. And what I found turned the tables in a way they never saw coming. I spent nights digging through boxes in my garage, old deeds, records, property lines. Each document was like a breadcrumb leading me deeper. Until finally, I went to the county office, my hands shaking as I requested files that hadn't been touched in decades. The clerk squinted at the screen, printed off a stack of papers, and slid them across the counter. The ink was faded, but the words were clear. My family didn't just own the lot my house stood on. The deed stretched back, covering acres that included the very streets, parks, and common areas the HOA claimed as their domain. I wasn't just a homeowner under their rule. I was the landlord of their entire kingdom. I walked out of that county building clutching those documents like they were dynamite. Because in a way they were. Every smug fine, every petty letter, every moment they looked down on me, they had built it all on land that wasn't theirs to rule. And suddenly the question wasn't, how will I pay them back? The question was, what am I going to do with the truth that I own everything they think belongs to them? That night, I couldn't sleep. My heart raced with possibilities. Should I tell them right away? Should I drop the bomb in the middle of their next board meeting? Should I keep it quiet, let them keep piling fines, and then expose it all in one devastating blow? Every option tasted sweet, but one thing was certain: the HOA was about to learn the cost of arrogance. And that's when I made a choice that would change everything. Not just for me, but for every single person in that neighborhood. The next HOA board meeting was scheduled for a Thursday night. I marked the date on my calendar, circled it in red, and waited. Days. The documents burned in my hands like live coals. Every time I looked at them, I imagined the look on their faces when the truth hit the table. But with that thrill came a gnawing fear. What if they found a loophole? What if the court sided with them anyway? What if, despite everything, they still managed to bury me under debt and humiliation? That fear almost stopped me. But then I remembered the president's smirk, his words echoing in my head. "We own you now." And suddenly, my hesitation turned into resolve. I wasn't walking into that meeting as a victim anymore. I was walking in as the man who held the deed to their entire empire. The night arrived. The community hall was packed with folding chairs, the kind that squeak when you shift your weight. People murmured in low voices, some eyeing me with curiosity, others with disdain. To them, I was already the villain, a troublemaker who refused to follow the rules. At the front, the board sat like judges on a stage. Papers spread before them, gavel at the ready. The president cleared his throat, looked down at his notes, and announced, "Tonight, we will address the continued violations of Mr. Your Name. The fines, as of this week, total $250,000. Failure to pay will result in legal action." The room fell quiet. All eyes turned to me. I stood up slowly, the folder of documents in my hands. My heart pounded, but my voice came out steady. "Before you do that, there's something you need to see." I walked to the front, placed the papers on the table, and slid them toward the president. His smug grin faltered as he scanned the pages, his brow furrowed, his lips parted. And then the color drained from his face. The truth was spreading down the table like a virus, infecting every board member with disbelief. The secretary leaned in, whispering urgently. Another board member grabbed the papers, flipping through them with shaking hands. Finally, the president looked up at me, his voice trembling. "Where did you get this?" "From the county records," I said. "Turns out my family's deed predates your entire subdivision. And according to these documents, I don't just own my lot. I own the land under your clubhouse, your parks, and every single home in this neighborhood." Gasps rippled through the room. A woman in the back clutched her chest. Someone muttered, "That can't be true," but the silence that followed told me everyone knew it was. The president slammed his hand on the table. "This doesn't change anything," arced. "We have bylaws. We have power." "No," I cut him off. "You had power, but not anymore. Not when the ground you're standing on belongs to me." The room erupted. People shouted over one another, half in disbelief, half in anger. Some demanded answers from the board. Others turned to me, eyes wide with a new kind of respect or fear. For years, the HOA had hidden behind clipboards and fine print. They ruled with intimidation, weaponizing rules to control good people. But now, for the first time, they were the ones cornered. I let the noise build, then raised my voice over the chaos. You wanted to bankrupt me with fake fines. You wanted to take my home. But here's the reality. Every dollar you've spent maintaining this neighborhood, every playground, every fence, every paved road, you did it on my land. And you never even asked permission. They weren't just exposed. They were potentially liable. The president tried to regain control, banging the gavel like it would save him. But his voice cracked as he called for order. No one listened. Finally, he turned back to me, desperate. "What do you want?" That was the question, wasn't it? What did I want? I could have demanded rent, could have ordered them to dissolve the HOA entirely, could have taken their smug empire and crushed it under the weight of my signature. I looked around the room at the nervous faces, the wide eyes, the people who had once whispered about me like I was a problem to be solved. Now they saw me differently, not as an enemy, But as the man who had pulled back the curtain, I took a breath and said, what I want is simple. You leave me and my land alone. No more fines, no more threats, no more lies. They dissolve every bogus violation against me, right here, right now. Because if you don't, the next letter you'll receive won't be from me. It'll be from my attorney. And trust me, you don't want to know what it feels like when the real owner of this neighborhood comes to collect. The silence was deafening that night. I walked out of the hall with my head held high. No fines, no liens, just the quiet shock of a neighborhood that had finally seen their rulers stripped bare. But here's the truth I want you to hear. This wasn't just about one man beating an HOA. It was about standing up when the odds are stacked against you, about digging deep when everyone says you're powerless, about refusing to bow even when they threaten to take everything. Because sometimes the only way to break free from control is to remind the world of the ground you're standing on and to claim it as yours. And that's why this story matters. Not because I won, but because they lost the illusion that fear makes them kings.